you don't know who I am, I'm Mrs. Barker. I teach art here at Lebanon High School, and this is like a really cool thing that we're doing. There's not a lot of inter-school collaborations out there, as far as I know. Like, I don't know of any others in the state of Missouri. Doesn't mean that they're not happening, I'm just not aware of them. And so this is a program that was started 3 years ago. And
this is the fourth year.
This is the fourth year that we're doing this. And we're really excited to be working with the Waynesville Art Department and to continue this collaborative experience. And we're also really excited that Mr. Adams over here has continued the Missouri Arts Council grant program. And so programs like this are being funded through the Missouri Arts Council, and we appreciate him for continuing that, because that's made it possible to do cool things like have Dr. Lori Santos from Wichita State University come here today and lead us in this art lock-in workshop. And just because we have a mixture of Lebanon's Yellow Jackets and Waynesville Tigers here in our library, shout out to Dr. Cox for helping to prepare our library and welcoming us here. I just want to make sure that all of you know all of the staff that you're going to be working with today. I don't think, besides Mr. Adams and Miss Sandoval is one of our art teachers, and so is Miss Milberg. You'll be seeing them later today. But if you don't know them, this is Miss Amy Rushing from Waynesville High School, and we have Miss Sarah Luttrell from Waynesville High School, and we have Miss Mackenzie Birdsell from Waynesville High School. And we're really happy to have everybody here. So if you have a question today, we have all of these art faculty to help you through your creative process. So that being said, I want to more formally introduce Dr. Lori Santos. She is an art education associate professor from Wichita State University, and she specializes in indigenous art, indigenous artists. She's an indigenous artist herself, and I'll let her give a self-introduction, but she's going to be talking about our relationship with each other, with nature, with the land, and kind of helping us work through that creative process.
Michaela Clymer, MYLACLIME, doing the stick wrapping. It's important to appreciate
How Taigaway. I'm Dr. Lori Santos, and my Indigenous heritage. Yesterday was Indigenous Day, and Indigenous of the to actually discover Columbus on the shores from Puerto Rico to Dominican, much of the Caribbean islands. So I have a lot of heritage mixed to the way I see the world, things, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. But I'm an artist and an art educator. Recently been trying to think of myself as an ecocentric person, so connecting to the world, to the natural world more, and being a listener. So, and then here's a little bit of information about myself. This is in Mexico City at Three Palos Casa Azul. The other clue that I'm an artist, I'm going to tell you a funny story. They're all artists. I think we are innately artists, creative beings. And sometimes, unfortunately, the world and situations kind of tap that down and tell us something else. But whether you're a practicing, producing artist of making artworks, you are a creative being every day. So I've done a lot of work in many different countries. I went to Ecuador with a group called Ecological Action, and we went there to, I was invited to come with a group of the artists from also other areas across the United States and South America to protest a lot of the mining that's going on and displacing many of the indigenous communities. And so we got to work with folks there. We got to go protest right at the front of the mining and, stand tall and firm and get the message out. And we held in one of the small towns adjacent to where the mining is, just to bring more awareness. They had panel discussions. It was a whole community event. So I'm a real big believer of using art and other things woven in together to get that message across. And so it's what's called community and social practice. And there's a lot of artists doing that kind of thing. So we were there together with artists and scientists and just different indigenous folks. We're there at the first meeting spot, and I'm sitting there, like, my friend, my other colleague, professor, who's the scientist, we were both invited. He was the scientist, and I was the art end. And I'm like, where are all the art people? You know, because we like to gravitate to our kind, right, sometimes. But it's also good to, intermix. He's like, oh, they're coming, I'm sure they're coming. I'm like, okay. So I'm going to go use the restroom and get soda, whatever, I'll be back. And so I come back about 3 or 4 minutes later, and I'm sitting there, and he looks at me and he's like, Lauren, they're here, you missed it. And I'm like, what? He says, yeah, because it was unbelievable. The front door started to sort of rattle a little. And there was light coming under and through. And then it burst open. And in walks the artists. I said, look over there. Here's this group of a dozen or so artists. They all had scarves on. I thought that was just hilarious because sometimes people that wear scarves, are a little bit, expressive and exuberant. It was very interesting to see that contrast between the artists over there with all their scarves, colorful scarves, and then had the scientists with their more, earthy colors, even, their khaki pants and button shirts. So it was an interesting experience. So land acknowledgements, just thinking about that within the Americas, everywhere we walk, we are on traditional indigenous lands of the thousands of cultures that have come before us at this point. Now we have, within the United States, 574 federally recognized nations. They are sovereign nations. They have their own laws, communities, government system. So they're like a little country inside the different states that they're in. So for me in Wichita, some of the traditional folks are the Kiowa, Osage, the Wichita people, and the people in Southern Council Fires, Lakota, Dakota, Nakota. Which sometimes there's a lot of these different things that we don't know. How many of you knew that there were groups of people? I think the Lakota, often people know the Lakota, or have heard that name, right? But that's just one group of this larger cultural group. And there's smaller little bands. Within Missouri, the Osage and a lot of the Council Fire people came through this area. Missouri does not currently have any reservations or particularly designated national lands associated with the people, but within Kansas we have 4: Prairie Band, Potawatomi, Kickapoo, the Sac and Fox, and the Iowa, Kansas, and Nebraska.
Hi, my name is Brennan Myers, BREANMYERS. Just finished one of her tie-dye like it's really fun. Learned to be very more conscious of how much I consume in nature.
Today I'm going to talk a little bit about what I'm merging my artistic into eco-regenerate, and also try to grow in my understanding of the earth and indigeneity and that connection. So this is something that you're familiar with. Think about Native American art. I at the National Museum of and often when they're in is what they want to see. They want to see, paintings, installations, kinds of things that sometimes looked upon as like temporary, in the big museums where the real artists are. And these types of art forms are the things that they want to see. For me, most of us, and probably you could agree with this, art isn't you're making, all an expression of yourself, right? Telling a story. So you're putting yourself into it. So it's all art. So this is me too. My grandparents over here, my parents in the middle, and culturally I come from folks from islands, so I have like just a small little snippet of my shell collection over here because I ended up growing up in Kansas. It's not really an island. Collect things with permission and I try to be very mindful about when I'm gathering things. And I create art that also tells cultural stories about my heritage. A lot of artists do that. I'm sure some of you even do that. You might not realize that's what you're doing yet. This is Pele, the goddess of the volcano. She's very powerful. Most people think of her because like when the volcano explodes, it's like destroying things, ripping things apart, but actually what she's doing is creating as well. She's creating land. And that's how the Hawaiian Islands were formed, was from those volcanoes erupting up and then over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, right, creating land. These are some of my other artworks. I really enjoy doing a lot of things with mixed media. The one on the right is called Mother Tongue. It's a pretty large piece. It's about half the size of this screen. The 574 tribes or nations are all written on these little slips of paper around. More art, painting. I used to think that painting, I still love painting. I used to think that painting was the art form to be. If I'm an artist, I'm going to be a painter. And I'm sure that some of you that like particular media over another feel maybe the same way. But now, so these are some older paintings, oil, acrylic, still doing things that are connected to the environment, flowers, the flora, the fauna, animals. But then I started playing around with doing mixed media like those other pieces, and now I'm even more pushing it to incorporate, instead of just painting things about the environment, I'm including the environment, the organics, into my artwork. This one is, I also make a lot of protest art too. This one is about the Standing Rock movement to protest the pipeline, the oil pipeline that went through. And we held an event, another event where artists and speakers came to talk about it. And this is a big piece that I created to represent the destruction of the Black Snake, which is the oil pipeline. It's going through the heart of the people. This piece right here I created in memory of my father, who passed away about 8 years now. It shows representation of Kansas and Maui, where he was born and raised, and it becomes kind of a little bit like an ofrenda with lots of things here at the bottom that he enjoyed, that he valued. Remember and honor him. And then again, I wanted to look more into my own history, because often within the United States, there is this idea of kind of melting together into this new sort of identity of being an American, which is fine, but I think it's also important to think about where your family came from and the things that are important to you and your family, and what makes you also your own little community. And I truly believe that your body kind of knows this genetically. It's come through. So I've noticed that I gravitate towards water, shells, rocks, things like that, feathers, and it's because my body wants those things in my life. This is the tiny hotel, kind of like Romeo and Juliet, the two young teens who loved each other but couldn't be together because they're from different villages, and so they prayed to Atabe, who is the female creator god in the Taino tradition, and she turned the young boy into a hummingbird and the girl into a red flower so that they could be together. Also a little bit of a trickster story too, because it's like, okay, which flower? So the story is, and it's a way of also explaining things within the natural environment. So he's, forever trying to find her in the different flowers. About 5 years ago, I read this book called Braving Sweetgrass by Citizen Potawatomi botanist, Dr. Wall Kimmerer, and just like really kind of blew my mind, right? I just was like, whoa. Just the way she tells stories about connecting to nature or the natural environment. And a particular philosophy that I'm trying to embody and include into my artistic practice is the honorable harvest. Because I use so many natural materials and I'm gathering things, we don't want to just take, right? We want to do things in a good way. This very indigenous way to think about that, how I'm doing things, how I'm walking in this world. Am I doing it in a good way? Think about that for yourself. What does that mean for you to walk in this world in a good way? So this is what she says. Never take the first. Ask permission. Listen for the answer. Take the lead. Limit harm. Everything you share, be great and reciprocate the gift. So giving back. So let's take a minute. Look at that. And what I would like for you to do, pick one of those that you think kind of resonates with you, that you could sit with. And tell your neighbor or partner what you think about that. Like, how do you already do that in your life? How do you already walk away using one of these principles? How might you do that? Like, a lot of great chatter going on, discussion. Could one person just share what you heard from your neighbor?
Trash around the woods.
Yeah, cleaning up trash around the woods. Going on a hike, if you have an extra bag with you. Yeah, that's, and then hopefully people don't do that, right? I wish folks wouldn't do that. It is sad. I love that. It's great. So, what I learned with Dr. Robert as well is we're thinking differently about natural environment, and often call nature about your part of the system are also nature and organic, and that's not like made synthetically or put together by things that aren't using natural materials is nature. And she talks about how plants are those who take care of us. And there are so many things I've been learning about how we can use plants. Things that we think of as weeds are actually medicine. Like, you can eat dandelions. Did you know that? Yeah, they're kind of bitter. Get them on your way tender, but bitter roots also are good for you. It's good for your system to detox. So these are things that have become really important to me, and that I'm hoping to inspire others to start thinking about it, because I think that we're becoming more and more into grave situation with climate change and disrespect of the environment, that thinking ahead for your children, your children's children, what is this world going to look like if we don't start caring now? So she also talks about how we can change our thinking and think about the things in the natural environment as kin, as gifts, because we cherish and take care of gifts, and that thinking about how the natural world has rights just like we do, and being more mindful about the way we walk through this world, and being more in relationship, in this sort of circular relationship with the environment, rather than this hierarchical kind of structure where only one person gets to be the one in charge. It should be, a community, right? It's very difficult to live in isolation. It's not actually a healthy thing for you to live in isolation and not in a community. So she said, I took a workshop with her. I've seen a lot of her talks, and in one of the talks, folks said, well, what am I going to do? I'm just one person. How am I going to make a difference? And what she said is that you could plant a garden, no matter how small, how big it is. But planting a garden is, is like sowing that seed of starting to change the way you think about things. And so this is in my garden in front of my house that I started a couple of years ago. I completely took out the grass in the front yard and turned it into a monarch way station. The neighbor across the street at the same time was putting in sod. And he came over and he says, well, you don't like grass very much, do you? I was like, well, what do I need it for? So, but yeah, this is going to be for all my relatives, the butterflies, the birds. And there's so much enjoyment that comes out of this, not only for them as nourishment, us as nourishment, because I'm planting vegetables, I'm planting herbs, fruits, different things that I can share with them. But let me tell you, there's a whole world going on in here that's a lot of fun to watch once you start doing it. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to encourage and invite you to think about. So here's just different aspects of my garden. I planted the Three Sisters Portuguese and squash area. I did a couple summers ago, I did a tour of the Pawnee Nation, Osage Nation, Muskogee Nation, down in Oklahoma to learn more about indigenous practices in farming and gardening. You're like, oh, wait a minute, I thought this was an art presentation. So that's some of you thinking? Yeah. It is. Oh, I'm glad you said that. It is. And the reason why it is because art is about life. And your art becomes so much more meaningful for you, for others, when you put in these stories about life into it. So, of course, nature journaling, I've been doing a lot of that. Next one, paintings, using these things. Oh, I threw this one in here. Look at these crazy things. These are potatoes. Who knows where potatoes come from? It's not Idaho. Okay? Who knows? Anyone? Over here? It is in Peru. Yeah, South America. I spent a lot of time there working with artists and students in Peru. There are about 4,000 different types of potatoes. Isn't that crazy? The biodiversity is immense that we just don't know about, and it's so important, really so important to keep things healthy. Diversity makes the world a healthier place. Just a little sample. Yummy. Okay, so I'm making art. So I'm going in, gathering things, making eco prints. So this is some of the stuff we're going to do. Next one. Oh, my friends. It's a bumblebee, and this one is like totally drunk on pollen. It's hilarious just to watch these. See, it's like a little YouTube video live in action. I can watch these little, I just get up there and watch them. Butterflies. Oh, the praying mantis. You don't see those very often. See the surprises you get in the garden. It's amazing. The monarch caterpillars. Oh my gosh, who knows that book, The Very Hungry Caterpillar, right? From your childhood? Oh my, it's so true. I have videos of these guys, and they will decimate a plant and nothing flat. And it's really kind of hypnotic to watch. Oh, how about this one? I thought you might like this one. Spider with the they're really fun. It's interesting to see all these, because then inspired to think about the ways I might want to use in my art. And with my plants, I don't think I have a picture of it, but I know how the things were twisty and each other as they went through, and I'm like, wow, this would be something hundreds, thousands of years, right, that people saw and used to think of which they cook things like things, right? So, and then other critters, so, you know, all the friends that I become with have become involved in a project called pollination because I believe that understanding our with the environment can help bring about peaceful relations in our communities. And so I this project go around not only here, other schools, community, share a little bit about eco-printing and the process and make different pollinators. They're like different little faux pollinators, and last August I had a show where these were all up, and some of these, especially some along the bottom back here, are different examples of prints that children from kindergarten all the way to high school, like yourselves and community members, made, and then I pulled it into this community or, you know, installation. These are some individual pieces, just again using some mixed media, the eco-printing. So again, this idea behind regenerative practices does have that kind of eco-justice type of foundation, and this is a way of prioritizing and rebuilding with the natural environment, with Mother Earth, supporting and restoring environmental places. We have to live here too. We should live together. And I know sometimes it's like, oh, that sounds like a little too idyllic, right? But it has to start somewhere. It has to start somewhere. And so think about how you could plant that seed in yourself and how you can allow it to germinate peace in you so that you can give that out to others, right? Something even as simple as a smile. You know, when you smile at someone, they can't help but just smile back. Oh, venturing into nature journaling is going to be something that you can explore today. Some of you, anybody do that? Draw things from nature, whether it's that, oh great. So whether you're using your imagination or actually doing that deep dive to kind of look at things. So some tips to think about today is as you wander and explore and grow your curiosity about the natural environment, you want to think about what you notice, what you wonder, and what it reminds you of. As you're also drawing, those are some things to think about. These are some examples from my sketchbooks, and sometimes they're things like that I do a little bit abstract. Like sometimes I'll draw things very, very particular, realistic, but then I also like to think about gathering the essence of whatever it is that I'm drawing, or thinking about what is that plant telling me? What is that little bug saying to me? And I think it's a wonderful way to use your imagination, but also a wonderful way to help you to sort of slow down and find ways to connect. You know, if you can connect with that. And I don't like spiders, I'll be honest, I don't like spiders, but you know, Charlotte, I started calling her Charlotte out there in my garden. I became endeared with her and checking her out every day and taking pictures and watching her build her web, and sometimes she'd like scurry along when I'd get too close and I'd be like, oh, okay, I'm sorry, and back up a little bit, you know. And it was just really fascinating to see like how her legs moved, and like thinking about, oh, if I'm going to make an artwork with her, what's it, you know, what's not her physically, but inspired by her, what is it going to look like, you know? And I think that is one of the things that made me think about getting back into things like weaving, not only with the morning glories twisting around, but you know, the spider webs and things like that. A lot of fun. And so some of these prints that these folks made last year went into installations that I created. And so this year, again, I have a show in January. So I'm going to ask you to think about being in reciprocity with me. And when you make an eco-print, the first one you make, I would like for you to do a, faux pollinator. Okay? And then being in reciprocity with me, you'll gift one back to the installation project, and then you keep one. And then from there, whatever time we have and materials, sometimes people make 2 or 3, you look at. So all of this is a foundation of these 4 tenets, which come from indigenous scholars that I've been researching and also connecting with when I go out into communities. So it's not all, I love books and research, it's not all just book, it's also connecting directly with people, going to the communities and talking to the people. If you're really interested, well, the other, Waynesville, your mascot is a tiger, so you love tigers. My brother loved tigers. Well, if you want to learn more about tigers, contact conservation places, and even your local zoo is a good place, or other people that are actually working directly with and researching about tigers. Probably you're not going to get to be in a room with a tiger, unfortunately, right? But it's about respect, making things relevant, fostering that idea of reciprocal relationships, and being responsible. So those are 4 good kinds of things the way in which you can move through this world, again, in that good way. But this piece right here is a contemporary Native artist, Belcourt, who's Métis from Canada. She just these beautiful pieces, really large, with all of these plants, have different stories and types of insects, or birds, and things. And so, in the tradition of making these large pieces to kind of honor these different relatives. So here we're getting into looking at some particular Native American artists. I started noticing that, weren't recognizing diversity within the community, artists, what some of the contemporary artists are doing, different kinds of, still tell indigenous story. In practice, I did in 12 museums before I went to the university level. I started in contemporary or living art. So I'll share a few with you, and I hope you enjoy these. These are all the first few artists that I work at. If you ever get an opportunity, I'm an artist, you're working now with me, in your community, as you travel around this world, if you ever get an opportunity to really talk one-on-one with an artist or work with them, take it. It's a beautiful opportunity. So Will Wilson spent a week with us at our school, and we did a lot of work with him. And these pieces here kind of show not such a great picture. So his work really concentrates a lot on, and this is before COVID, this the mask thing has nothing to do with COVID, but it is about the damage that we are doing to the environment, and thinking about being more respectful and in reciprocity with the environment and what's happening with it. So he creates these pieces that are kind of futuristic looking at, like, what does he think? These are sacred places on the reservation, but what is it going to look like in 100 years? Or am I going to be able to enjoy that place without having to have a mask on? This piece right here was really interesting, where he created like a hogan, and in the Navajo tradition, I lived in Arizona for 10 years, worked with Hopi artists and Navajo artists, and the hogan is a structure that they create that there's 2, a female and a male hogan. And the male hogan is used as for ceremonial purposes, and the female hogan you'd live in. And he created this sort of mock-up of kind of a design, circular, like a hogan, and then he put all these plants in there, and then he had like chairs or like a cot that you could go in there and you could lay on, and then you could put headphones on to like listen to things, you know. So this is an artist doing like an installation, immersive type of experience for you to be surrounded by these things. Has anyone ever heard of some of the technology things that are happening that people are experimenting with, where you can like hook up these electrodes to like plants, mushrooms, and things like that, and you can hear sounds, or they make art with it from the sounds? It's really interesting. It's really cool. So that's kind of tapping into that, because they are saying things to us, but we're not listening. We're not listening. So how can we listen more? So this is an opportunity he's giving people to slow down, stop, and listen. There's a beautiful mural down the hall. So the next few artists I picked to show you particularly because they are Osage, and the Osage were traditionally in this area. These pieces are really large, also probably about the whole size of this screen, some of them, the large paintings, and they all have different symbols and things that tell stories about what it means to be Osage or their history. Even thinking about, so past, present, and then also future. That is a really significant concept within Indigenous thinking, because your past, present, and future, it's all wrapped up in you in this moment. We're just going to look at some pictures. Look at this, Anita Fields, Osage. So I'm showing you these contemporary artists so that hopefully maybe you might find someone that you're interested in. Jim Lacey Redcorn, Gina Gray, Moira Redcorn. Redcorn is kind of like Smith in the Osage world. I like this one. This one's really cool because she incorporates, you can't see it very well on this slide, but she incorporates stories into the paintings. So encouraging you to think about, I have my students do a lot of what's called visual journaling, in your sketchbook, where you're also writing and drawing at the same time. And I think some of you do that as well. This one is using the clay, and she has made her handprints with the clay, starting out from the center with a piece in the center, and then actually it became an installation type piece. Okay, now this is a Cherokee artist that I've always loved, because these examples now I think we're moving into more that are artists that are talking about the environment, and whether it be something about the beauty of it, the sacredness of it, or the concern for it. Emmy Whitehorse, she's Dene or Navajo. It's just beautiful. But this one's a very spiritual, mystical one. All forms of art are valid, so there's lots of different stuff happening in these pieces. And she also is using different types of symbols to represent things, and we don't know 100% what this story is for her, but she invites us in to know it, and we can imagine and come up with our own story and then maybe find out more later. So I wanted to show you a few artists, Indigenous artists, that are creating abstract art based on an approach that's often referred to as intuitive painting. So it's like and that's something as far as like a activity that you can do today. I'm going to invite you to think about engaging with something within the natural environment, and then having a response be, a sensory response to it, that then comes out on the paper, even a spiritual response. You might think, maybe try to imagine what that flower is saying to me, and tell me, could I paint that with colors? So the things, Lebanon, Northwest area, Carapita, Santa de Pueblo, Fritz, Henry Gobin, Hank, and Big pretty busy. He's you see, I'm sure Native people. My daughter is Creek and Seminole, but she's only a citizen of the Muskogee Nation. She can't be a citizen of both. This is my friend Tiola. He's in Wichita, and he does a lot of things with using ledger paper and printmaking on top and cyanotypes and creating symmetrical type designs that brings different kinds of plants back down to basic shapes and forms. And also within the with the Ojibwe people, traditionally they used to do, and some still do, they created things like bandolier bags, and they were meant to be kind of showy pieces. It was just like something that was an added kind of decor on you, and you would have your patterns on there from the different plants, flowers that were meaningful to you and your community. And so then when you would go places, people would see your bandolier bag and they would know what region you were from. You're going to pick one. This is 3, number 2, and then number 1. Now, all of these artists are creating work that is in response to the natural environment. So I want you to try to think about, well, what's the story there? What is that artist trying to say? So you can talk, let's do another minute where you talk with your neighbor about it. Yeah, so take a minute, talk with your neighbor about what you think they're saying in that particular piece. Who wants to share? Can I get one person to share story ideas of that particular piece that they chose? Or you can share what someone told you.
Let's ride.
For the first one, I think, like, my first thought was reduction of environment through pollution, and it made me feel like immense amount of like disgust for people purposely and maliciously destroy the beauty of the environment for their own personal gain. That was like the first thing that came to my mind when I was looking at it. I don't know, it feels so like the intensity of the colors, like they really nailed down on like black and red over something that looks to be like some sort of field, when the normal colors would be a lot more vibrant, a lot more like green and like blue and white, like all of these bright colors, and replacing it all with those extremely dark, like dreadful colors, I think communicates that intense message really well.
For the first one, like, I kind of want to add something on to that. You kind of see like a bit of blues and the tiniest bit of greens, like it's turning into the like bad like wasteland-esque. And I'm gonna also go to I believe the third one. I really like it because it reminds me of like hummingbirds and like the flowers and the colors. Like it's very like nature-esque. It's very cutesy to me, kind of. I really like it.
I think the first one, I feel like it resembles like blood on your hands, but instead of the hands, it's land.
I really like it because it looks like, so the middle looks like a person like above the land, and it looks like everything's distorted and in chaos, so like showing how land is going to disappear like entirely into chaos one day.
Alright, so another artist, a little bit more geometric-like, right? Rather than, because when you think about doing things in the environment, or things about like land and flowers and plants and whatnot, it tends to be a little bit more curvy-like, but Kyoma is very geometric, so very valid way to express, right? Okay, just a reminder again, so what we're thinking about today, we're thinking about being in eco-kinship from an indigenous perspective. We're going to honor the teachings of our non-human relations, the animal and plant people. That's what Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer is teaching us. She talks about in one of her stories about how if we could change our thinking to the idea of like trees and plants and things as being our relatives and having what she calls personhood, so referring to them as a they or a she or him rather than an it, because an it is an inanimate object. She wants us to think about those as being a part of us and in our community, so we're in community and reciprocity. These are prompts for you to think about that maybe you might want to respond to this. This comes from an organization called Indigenizing Arts Ed, and I took a workshop with them, and she invites people to kind of fill out these prompts as a poem, okay? And the same with this here. This is another poem starter. So you might decide you might want to choose that, and maybe you could reflect, write on it in your nature journal, or maybe you even might want to visually create something. So we are reflecting and connecting. These are other examples. I like to call them eco-musings. So we're in relationship and kind of like being inspired by them. So finishing this out, the bird sings, the flower or whatever tells me. I love this because tips for journaling. You know, we got to observe, we got to listen, we got to sit with it. It's really difficult to really make that connection with something if you don't spend time with it, right? Okay, one of them is going to be the eco-printing. So these are pictures from different groups. I think this was a group in Lima doing eco-printing. So it kind of gives you an idea of what we do with the leaves. We're going to be doing audible harvest. We've got plants also to use, and you're going to be making prints with them. So the nature journaling, I always love thinking about, these are examples from my students, and we can show you ways to make little bitty books. You probably know some ways to do some like little zines, you know, or little accordion book or something, and then maybe you want to do some recording and things in there. So these are more examples of different types of nature journaling, or these are stuff from my students and focus work on, and some of them are more, look up here, these shells. I brought some of my shell collection here if you like shells. You can, draw the detail, but also these down here are a little bit more abstract, conceptual, a little bit more, I don't know, the emotional response to things. Okay, this one, if we can print this off, these are also tips or prompts, if you will. Okay, the intuitive nature painting. Again, on that big roll, and we'll probably have the other paper, and this is going to be more like abstract. I'm going to ask you to think about sensory connection to the plants, to nature in general, right? Okay, nature mandalas. I worked with an artist out in Berkeley who did a lot of these mandalas, and she's been doing this forever. And so I've been playing around with mandalas now, or, a circle is a very sacred type of symbol in a lot of cultures. And in indigenous cultures of the Americas. And so I've been down doing prints. I'm doing of mandalas on prints that are going to then be displayed as one group. But I thought it was interesting if we could find a spot somewhere outside we can collectively just add to it throughout the day and create weavings. Here's some collage mixed media. Now these are my works, and so this layered project you're going to, if you want to make one, you're going to first do your intuitive painting, just exploring color and texture things, and then overlay lines, right? Start with your intuitive painting from there. And this one is a fun one that even you can't see it very clearly, but things over there, those are bird sounds. So I just sit there and be like, beep, 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 beep. Just like those sounds that wind. What is that like when you put that on paper? I take my brush. Collection of stencils, all kinds of stuff. And the native art use a lot of symbols, and so it's a really quick way to find different symbols and things that have meaning for you. You can certainly make your own stencil, and you can free paint it, but doing things with the decolorant. And this is a part of my installation, and so when I've been doing workshops, I've also been asking if people would make one. It's usually about like 4 to 6 feet long. Books are great! Okay, we're in the library. Just a plug, I've got lots of books. These are all written by indigenous authors. They could be so inspiring. So I brought some of those, and they tend to be all nature-based up here. So if you want to be inspired by one of these books in your art making, sit down and read one of these books. This book is written by Joe Harjo. It's actually a poem that then they put into a book, and it's called Remember. And it's focused on remembering about our relationship with each other, your parents, your community, the earth. It's really a beautiful book, so I'd invite you to look at this one if you get a chance. And then the imagery is created by Michaela, who is a native artist as well, from a Northwest Coast tribe. I'm forgetting her tribe at the moment. I know it's listed in there. But it's a beautiful story. Remember, so towards the end, remember the plants, trees, animal life, who all have their tribes, their families, their histories too. Talk to them, listen to them, and this universe is you. Well, I've been an educator for about 30 years. So presenting on multiple types of projects off and on over the course of my professional career as an art educator. But this sort of particular topic and really this deep dive into this new phase of my life that I think is just beautiful, and I hope others will join and join in with like what Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer says. She's been talking about, she's starting this new movement, and so I want to make a chapter.
A chapter.
Yeah,
Oh,
I think a chapter and with her new movement. It's called Plant Baby Plant. So instead of, really trying to counter this idea of drilling, right? But plant baby plant. So
Hi. I just wanted to know what your experience has been like trying to tap more into like your connection with plants.
yeah, tapping into that could be a very deep emotional type of question, but is that the more I do this, the more I realize the more I do not know about how this life works. And it's okay because I have teachers and they're called plants. And there is just so much, and it's so rich. There's things that they can teach us and we can learn from them. And sitting with them has also helped. There's lots of studies. Okay, I'm a professor, so we're going to go research, right? There are studies out there that focus in on talking about how much engaging with plants and the natural world helps us emotionally and physically, right, and socially in the long run. Something as simple as lowering your blood pressure just by sitting in a beautiful surrounding of flowers and grasses and trees and things and listening and smelling is very calming to your whole being. And then to just spark your imagination, I really think it's just getting ideas going. So I'm not quite sure if that answers your question, but it's just because it's something that's always growing and changing. And it's a beautiful thing, and I think it just makes me want to learn more.
If you weren't doing this today, where do you think you would be?
I think it would very much still involve being with the natural environment and art in some way. I don't know what it would look like, but when I was a kid growing up, I wanted to be, kind of changed between being a veterinarian, because I loved animals, and I was always playing in the dirt, poking at bugs, collecting frogs, whatever, and also being a zoologist. And Diane Fossey and Jane Goodall were big heroes of mine, and I think that something involving, if I wasn't an art teacher specifically, definitely would be something involved with the environment in some way. So maybe I could have been a biologist, a botanist, zoologist, I don't know, but still art would be there. If I wasn't here with you all today, right now, physically, I would be in my garden, getting my hands dirty.
What university do you do you teach or peers and stuff?
So I'm a professor at Wichita State University in Wichita, Kansas. It's a pretty large university. There's lots of different programs there. I teach education, and I teach art history. I teach a book class, and I teach a fine class. So students who are going to be art teachers, and I teach them about how to engage with the community, how to create art lessons. I also the things I do a lot with them is I try to capture for them to find things that they want as an art educator. I teach all that stuff, and but I don't. I mean, I'm real understand. All going to go out in the classrooms and do all of this. I mean, I would just be so see some doing these things in their own classrooms and all of you, but you still have to find your own way and do the things that make sense to you. I really teach them that I think one of my philosophies for them is that art is about telling our stories, and that art is essential for a healthy life. So whether or not you're going to be an artist, as far as like a profession and you're making a living on it, I think it's very imperative that we all explore creativity and create in some way. And so I really try to nurture that in them a lot.
One, I wanted to add on to what you had been talking about with like plants and the way that they can help our physical health and our mental health. There has been a lot of different studies that have been done as to how plants affect everything around them, even down to like the soil that they're in. And there was one study that I remember I had read about, and it found that plants actually do better if they're talked to, or they have music being sung to them, or played to them. Secondly, what have you found to be the best way that you can get people to want to learn more, rather than just being taught?
I start out my classes with an art making activity when I don't like do a lecture. Like my students come into the classroom and I call them creative starters. And I think, so doing things hands-on. Like if I'm going to teach students about a chair, they're going to make a chair. They're not just going to draw a chair, right? So if I'm going to teach you about plants and the environment, then you're going to be in it. So I think that being involved in whatever it is that you're learning is really important. So it's like that hands-on. And then also I think it's important to do it together in groups, whether it's small or large. So being in community together. So we do a lot of projects where we're doing things together and supporting each other. And sometimes there is a student or two that wants to kind of do it on their own, which is fine. So I allow that autonomy. So if there's a student that doesn't want to do the project with the group.
So I am an art teacher here for kids that don't know, but I'm also still finishing my art education degree. I graduate in the spring, so that's nice. A lot of my kids know that, but I have a couple kids in here who have also expressed to me that they're interested in going into art education, which is very exciting. For your art education majors like myself and future art education students, do you have any advice for us teaching a new generation who may feel maybe disconnected with the natural world, considering the technology that we have going on right now? Do you have any integration advice too for that? And then I have another question that I want to add on to the end. Do you have a happy medium, a comfort medium, and why?
Our degree at Wichita State University for art education, very similar to most programs. When you come into the program, you take the gen eds that everyone takes. You have your studio focus, your art history. You take a core group of classes in education where you learn about psychology, child development, things like that. And then you take your art education specific classes where you learn about how to bring these things all together in the art classroom and actually, work with folks like yourselves. So I think first and foremost, it's important to remember that the art is about a story. It's a story about life, about you, about me, about the world. If you think of it that way, now, of course, you're going to learn skills, and you're going to develop your craft, so to speak, right? Learning those techniques and processes and whatever. But it really doesn't matter, no matter what you make, even if you're trying to make something that's just beautiful and looks good to hang on the wall. It's still a story about something, because you are something. And so then that brings me to you, or if you are my student, I want you to remember that you are a person that exists in this world that's important, that you have bravery, love, loyalty, compassion, and things to share with this world, and that you have that creativity in you, so that comes out as the artist, and so you should nurture all of those things in yourself. I do a lot of different stuff in the classroom, but yes, of course, I can't not be authentic and not talk about nature stuff and indigenous stuff in my classroom, because that's who I am. You have to be authentic too when it's your classroom or your experience. The happy medium, yes, I bring in other things. We talk about lots of different stuff. Every class, there's something about the core of who I am that I bring into the classroom, okay?
What has been your favorite experience so far getting more into nature? And two, how would you suggest somebody going about getting more into nature?
Over the last several years are the opportunities that I have to work with students. And bringing in nature, however it might be, even if it's a simple nature walk, because I'm in community with you and I'm experiencing what you're experiencing at the same time. And so I've traveled a lot, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, Peru, Ecuador, Mexico, different places where I've done these things. And the favorite moments are always about when we are together in community and actually interact with the natural world. I think that what it is, no matter if it's here in Missouri or Lima, Peru. It's that being in relationship and reciprocity with the natural world, what we think of as nature.
Have you ever used bugs in your art?
I do with the bugs a little bit more abstract, and even when I can remember in high school art teacher, we had the assignment. We did, of course. Find a bug, but don't kill the bug. You have to go find the bug. And I had abstract words on the bug. Yeah, and then there is there's a type of bug that comes from Mexico, beautiful red from, and I have that dye before. I collect bugs, or have a collection. I build them, and I try to be honorable about the way that I gather those things. I don't know if I ever really thought that I liked bugs that much, but I had a friend years back. She used to call me Bughead. That was her term of endearment, because I was always, when we go places, it was like I was always pointing out bugs. Bugs are interesting. There's, beetles, butterflies, there's so much. I think what draws me to them is the color and the pattern and the texture. Those three things. That's what draws me to them. It's not the bug itself, but it's those colors, those patterns and things on them.
Do you do art with anything other than bugs? Or do you that kind of animal or just bugs?
Abstract landscape, nature-y kinds of things, insects of all kinds, flowers of all kinds, seems to be the thing that I'm doing right now. But over the years I have done other things, like I have a whole series of horse paintings that I did. I used to love doing horses, mountain scenes, people, a lot of figurative art. I had a whole series of different types of still life paintings. I have done different stuff, but right now it's been mostly that. That's kind of an interesting question, because the last show, my mom and my sister came to my show, and then my sister came up to me and asked a similar question. She said, "Mary, why are you doing this?" She's like, "You used to make all these realistic drawings of these pretty little landscapes and birds and horses or paintings and whatever, things that were representational, and this to some extent is kind of abstract." And I was like, it's kind of a little bit of a hard question to answer, because it's like, I guess it's just because that's what's moving me right now. And if I think about it from a eco-justice point of view, it's something that I am deeply concerned and scared, I guess, about, because I do worry about what this world is going to look like in the future if more is not taught and embraced about ways in which we can honor and respect the natural environment.
One of them is, how was it like for you to get your degree in art education? Have you ever done any art with bones that you ever found? And do you own any carnivorous plants?
No, on the carnivorous plants. But I've seen them and taken pictures from time to time. I go to botanical gardens a lot too. The bones, I have a collection of bones. I have done some paintings and drawings and things with bones. I'll tell you, when I got my art education degree, I went to school in Kansas. I started out at a community college, and then I transferred to a 4-year college. And it was important to me to go, when I was at the community college, the painting professor who was there loved her work, her style. She just was like this really cool, like, professor. Like, she would, one day, she came into the classroom with a bird, it was a starling that she had found that was, had passed on, and she plunked it right in the middle of the still life platform. Okay, that's what we're painting today. So that was the kind of professor she was, and she also was big on community things, and I just really loved her, and I loved her expressive style and use of color and texture. And so she actually left the community college and took I guess you could say, a better job at a 4-year university. And so it was important to me to go to continue on at a university where someone was there that could inspire me, that I felt like I could connect with. And so that was the next step. And so I think for all of you, it is important for you to think about where you want to choose to go for college, if you plan to go to college, because you're going to be there for a while, and you want to go somewhere where you can envision seeing yourself be, and somewhere where you can connect to folks. And kind of the same thing as I went into the public schools, taught at museums, and then I decided to go back and do my master's. I went to KU, again, choosing a place where I thought I could see myself living, connecting with people, connecting with the community, and then eventually went to Arizona, was there for a long time, and then I decided to do my PhD, and then so I went to Texas, again, because of a professor that I knew that was there in Texas, and somebody I wanted to study with. So I think it's important for you to think about going to and doing your career and your schooling at a place that makes sense for you, and not because, some people will, you might have someone, I want you to go here because they've got the best football team. Well, if you don't really care much about football, then what does that matter, right?
Is there a favorite piece of yours that you've ever done?
As far as being a teacher goes, what do you feel like has been the most rewarding experience that you've had?
Well, I would say that probably one of my favorite pieces was the one with the big eagle that I did for my dad. It was I worked on it for after, and it was a very good piece. Symbols and things in there were important to me and my dad, and nobody else probably would get it, but they could a story, but it was really a story about my dad and the man he was, and and then imagining him soaring into heaven, or it might be that when we pass the rainbow song. If most of you was a revised version that Dorothy, but there's also a version by the artists, and of course one that really strong with my family. It was really that you've got this kind of plus the Hawaii connection. That's why that is tied somewhere over the rainbow, and there's a rainbow in it, and that's the eagle and the rainbow. And we also know that the pot of at the end of the rainbow. Well, over the rainbow, the depiction of that is that he is carrying his pot of gold with him, and remind. I'm a hard girl, like trying not to get all teared up, and it's okay to show your emotions, but he, in that painting, that wasn't a real great picture. It's hard to see, but the talons of the eagle is carrying. There's like a archway. That's the pot handle. The handle of the pot, and then there's a little bit of an indication of sort of like the opening, right? And then remember on the bottom where there were all those things. that's inside the pot. Those are all his things that he's carried with him. All these treasures of his love for his family, his community, the things that he did in his life, and those are things to cherish, and that I believe that you take those things with you, and so that's what that painting's about. Somewhere over the rainbow, he's taking those things with him, and we can feel, happy and good for that for him. And the other question was working. I love to see my students be successful and happy, and seeing the smiles and the joy on their faces when they create something that they're really proud of. I've had a few of my high school students who have gone on to be art teachers, and I think these teachers here probably know, when you have students that do that, that feels pretty good. You're so proud of them that they're going on and continuing that message. So I think every day just being in community with young kids from kindergarten up to high school is just a beautiful thing.
What kind of challenges did you face becoming an artist, and if so, were you ever discouraged by yourself and others, and then what are your biggest takeaways from that, being learned?
I think it's probably the same challenges you all have, because you draw that picture or paint that whatever, and you're like, that sucks. That looks stupid. Oh my God. I can't show that to anybody. They're going to make fun of me. I'm horrible. I'm not. All those things. I think we all have that in us. And I think it's important to remember that all forms of art are valid. Expression of your story. And there's different ways to do that. Styles, so you might create something that meant hyper. And I know that there's been times in my young career as this earlier stuff that I did was often wanted to see things like the happy little legs and the beautiful little flower was realistic and perfect, and I didn't always make the thing. Sometimes I did, but it's I think even now, as I mentioned earlier, my sister in my show with all the, she was like, this, and doing this, understand this. It's an amazing piece too. People were walk through it. I had other people who said, oh God, this is, I'm away. The lady at the desk that sat there in the gallery, she said that she told me, and this really touched me, Lori, I feel really honored. I get to sit here for a month and look at your art. It has just left me so much. So I actually went back to her and asked her maybe how that's impacting her now going down the road. But everything that you create and do in this world, this is a quote by Jane Goodall, that you make a difference here. And then if we think about art too, that you make, it makes a difference. But you get to decide what difference that's going to be. And what do you want to do in this world? Because I guarantee it, everything you do and say in this world creates something. What do you want it to be?